strategy. Corporate strategy alone, it's on its own is a big conversation. And then when you merge it with something else, it's going to be big. So I just want to encourage everyone here today to make sure that they are listening effectively, they have something to write, they are participating, they turn on their videos, they invite people who are supposed to be here, and these things are supposed to be paid for, but PNA is bringing it free on his platform. What I would not like is for people to take it for granted. Let's not take it for granted for one bit. And not just that, me would be happy if we use these things to help ourselves and apply this knowledge and not just listen to it and go back. There's a concept called the Berean Christians where they will go back and apply what they've learned. So I really, urge everybody to apply. But personally, that is it for me. Last week was practical. I think in one word, that's what I would say. Was practical, and I know today will be much more. And I see the guys on the back end have done so well today. The studio is all set up and there are no glitches. Thank you. Kudos to the guys at the back end.
Thank you. Kudos to the guys at the back end.
There's no software problem today.
Yeah. And then, okay, if there's anybody who wants to say something about last week, if you raise your hand, we can put you on and then we can have a discussion quickly before we bring up Prof. If you raise your hands, we can have our discussion quickly. So, who is raising up their hand? Emmanuel.
Yes, sir.
When I saw Prof's slides, when he sent it to me earlier today,
yes,
I was just saying to myself, why did I make this thing free? Why did I make this thing free? Very loaded, very loaded. But then we have given our words and then we have to fulfill it. So quickly, I'm not seeing any hand. Can you see any hand?
No. I'm also checking. I think
So
people are still just settling in. Some people are still trying to set up their space to turn on their views, but basically, superior corporate performance is something that everyone should learn, really. Superior corporate performance, and you must not be a CEO. You can be a staff, you can be working in an organization, but it will increase your contributory capacity to the organization where you work. And if you're a CEO, that makes it even a lot better. But business strategy, Nexus, and superior corporate performance is on another level altogether. And being communicated by Prof himself was just amazing. His level of articulation is something else. With all the network issues and software issues that he had last week, the few minutes that he had to communicate to us, the articulation was straight to the point. He wasn't distracted. I said, after listening to him, I said, no wonder professorship is not a village title. I've never seen an Anambra man who made so much money and they crowned him professor.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Emmanuel.
Yeah.
Okay, since we don't have anybody trying to communicate with us right now, trying to raise their hands to say something, I think we can just go to inviting Prof so that Prof can take the floor. Once he takes the floor, then we'll now get back into our discussions. So this is it. After it's done, I don't know how he will go about it. After it's done, then we'll take questions and we believe God that it will be very practical. Looking at the slide, I know it will be very, very practical. And then let me also acknowledge Adewumi Adisa, Major. That's my host whenever I'm in Manchester. Thank you for joining in. Also, I have my friend here, my host whenever I'm in London, he's here. I call him Olori Global. Olori Global. So thank you for joining in also. We have a lot of people from all over joining us here tonight. So now Prof is there. I don't think Prof needs any citations read in this in this country, and is this is that. I don't think we need all that. Prof has become not just a mentor, he has become a father figure, and he has never denied us any request that we have made for him to be on our platform. And he does this effortlessly and with all his might. And he's always willing to engage every now and then. I mean, sometimes when we were in Dubai in March last year, I mean, after he has done almost 8 to 10 hours of classroom teaching, I still had to take him to his room and still took people to go and see him for 20 minutes each. And he was willing, more than willing to do that. And I am actually forever indebted to him. I would always look for opportunities to pay my debt as I move on in this life, but I'm not sure I will fully pay it in the next 20 or 30 years. Again, last week he was with us. He wasn't supposed to speak last week, but he said he would join, and he did join, and he made all his contributions, which was awesome, mind-blowing, and then that's why it's always good to have a father in the house. And he's my mentor, and once he's my mentor, that means he's everybody's mentor on this platform. So ladies and gentlemen, you go to the chat room right now and help me welcome Professor Pachitomi as he takes the floor. Prof, before you talk, you have to watch the chat room. People will be welcoming you right now and then telling you, welcome. Yeah, you can see that. Welcome, Prof. Welcome, sir. Just look at the chat room. Good.
Thank you all very much.
Good. Guys, go to the chat room, please. Go to the chat room. Let Prof feel our presence. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, wow. So, Prof, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you. What a pleasure to be able to join again and to share a few thoughts on a subject that I think everyone needs to be engaged with and needs to be active on. The business national strategy nexus. What does this really mean? And we'll get to it in some depth in a moment. But you see, many years ago, I used to spend a lot of time traveling in Southeast Asia in the late 80s, in the 90s. A good part of my academic work was looking at the so-called tiger economies of Southeast Asia. I spent plenty of time in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Hong Kong, in Thailand. And something struck me while I was working in those countries, how leading corporations from around the world behaved differently there than they behave in Africa. It really triggered some thinking about a relationship between how a country positions itself and business enterprise within those countries position themselves if they are going to outperform rivals. And this for me was the national strategy, business strategy nexus. Let's start from some practical, real experience. Last week in Nigeria, First Bank of Nigeria was in the news, unfortunately for the wrong reasons. Few days afterwards, Moody's, Standard & Poor's gave notice that they were going to be reviewing their rating of First Bank. Now, what this means is that instantly, First Bank's value is in serious trouble. Imagine what investors in First Bank will be doing in terms of positions that they are taking. How does the environment affected by the way the country does things affect the strategy of an enterprise? I leave that as a teaser to have you reflecting while we go through this conversation. On the 28th of May 2019, Forbes magazine published an article that described Nigeria as Africa's money-losing machine. What does this really mean? What is the consequence of this for investments in Nigeria? What is the consequence for those who are planning their strategy in Nigeria? Obviously, pregnant, hugely pregnant, with possibilities, the kinds of choices that businesses will make, and the growth of this economy. So while you are pondering this, let me actually give one of my favorite examples. The Nigerian oil and gas sector is what has defined Nigeria for a very, very long time. We keep dealing with performance issues in the oil and gas sector. We're talking about spending $1.5 billion to refurbish a refinery that has been refurbished so many times. But in that same oil and gas industry, there is an organization called the Nigeria NLNG. It's considered perhaps the most profitable company in Nigeria, if not Africa. Now, how come the NLNG, just across the road, if you want to put it that way, from this same refinery is running differently and running so profitably, and by the way, is manned 100% by Nigerians? Anybody who is more interested in this subject, but if I might just provide a teaser, I run a series called the Nigeria History Series every fortnight. I mean, I think the one of tomorrow will be the 21st in the series. And we enter oil and gas tomorrow. We finished manufacturing 2 weeks ago. And we've got the real father of Nigeria's oil industry, Chief Philip Asiodu, a former oil minister, managing director, Imo Isueli, of a multinational oil company at the point, and of Dubri Oil, an indigenous one. And we've got all these people trying to engage on what went wrong in the Nigerian oil industry. A fortnight from now, we'll go to oil and gas and talk about NLNG specifically with former MDs of LNG and all of that. You're all welcome to participate. Maybe you can share the link with them, they want to. But in that conversation, you will find out how national strategy fails and how that impacts business strategy. But you then look at how corporate strategy, as a classic example with NLNG, can lead to your succeeding even in the environment of negative national strategies. Very, very interesting subject matter. But let's begin today by looking at a few quick case studies, just quick, sharp ones that focus our minds on this whole nexus of where national strategy meets corporate strategy and the consequence for how firms engage. Let me begin with the flour mills of Nigeria, a remarkable case study. Many years ago, a Greek shipping magnate called George Koumantaros began to ship shipping all kinds of stuff into Nigeria in the 50s. He saw Lagos growing as an urban area and figured, look, these guys cannot continue eating Eko and Ole before they leave the house in the morning, or doing some serious inyo before leaving the house in the morning to go to work on Lagos Island with traffic beginning to heat up and all of that. So they must move to some convenience food. It occurred to him that he could set up a flour mill in Nigeria. That flour mill is called Flour Mills of Nigeria. Within 10 years of that idea, Flour Mills of Nigeria have become the single biggest flour mill on one location on the planet Earth. Remarkable success story. Now, the success of Flour Mills of Nigeria meant that huge amounts of wheat were being imported into Nigeria. Flour Mills was milling the wheat into flour, and all the derivatives from that, we can talk about. Academics began to complain about Nigeria's wheat dependence on the United States, largely driven by imports by Flour Mills of Nigeria. And the effects of that and some radical writings in newspapers, new Nigerian newspapers at that time, ABU lecturers, led to a focus on that. Well, cut a very long story short, in 1986, President Ibrahim Babangida was going to commission a flour mill in Edo State, or Bendel as it was then. That flour mill was called the Bendel Feed and Flour Mills in Ewu. He got his speech, and on his way to Ewu, he used his pencil to write in one line that was not in the speech. If by the 1st of January 1987, the flour mills did not find alternatives to wheat, there was going to be a ban on the importation of wheat into Nigeria. So alternatives for milling flour needed to be found. Set up a huge crisis. I actually wrote a case study on this and invited the managing director of Flour Mills to discuss this case. And we discussed, because George Kumantaros was in shipping, because he was in flour milling, because he was in making bags, a company called Bagco that bagged flour, because he was in this value chain. The thrust of my case study was on vertical integration. When federal government banned the importation of wheat, Flour Mills of Nigeria, of course, began to grow maize in Niger State, in several places. Why did they intensify the thing? Why did they keep pressuring for? So the effect of our case study was, let's focus on vertical integration and how you are going to be held hostage if you are so vertically integrated. When there's a shift in policy, you struggle and you wouldn't know what to quite do. But when we finished the conversation in the class, the MD of Flour Mills of Nigeria said a very simple thing. He said, nice conversation, great case, just one small problem. This case did not mention the fact that in Nigeria, we have all kinds of things called waivers. Powerful people can go to the Ministry of Trade and Industry and get a waiver on something that is, say, banned. Back in those days, to aid the growth of local industry, the flour, you could import wheat to the country, but you couldn't import flour, so that you could facilitate the growth of the flour milling industry. So there was a ban on importation of flour. Now, as it turned out, powerful people could always go to the Ministry of whatever obtain a waiver to bring in amounts of flour. Now, some friends of a very powerful man had wanted to bring in some flour, and the very powerful man had assured them that he could get them a waiver. So they set 2 ships sail loaded with flour, expecting that before they enter Nigerian waters, their powerful friend would get them a waiver and they could bring in 2 shiploads of flour and make out like bandits. Well, interestingly, a certain man, strangely, who's back in the seat of government as president, was head of state at that time. And so the flour milling industry went and protested. And the man warned the Minister of Trade that if such a thing happened, whoever gave the waiver would be executed in the bar beach by firing squad. So nobody dared to give a waiver. And so the powerful man's friends waited and waited at the edge of Nigerian waters, and their friend could not get them a waiver, and their shipload of flour had to turn back. As Mr. Musu, who was MD of Flour Mills at that time, said in that class, that very powerful man became president. And that thing written in pencil on his way to was, in Amusu's consideration, his revenge on the flour milling industry. But that aside, the point to make from that case is how corporate strategy has been influenced so much by a national strategy, which originally was protect the local flour milling industry and, ban the importation of flour. But suddenly, because national strategy was not clear, it was changed. And because it was changed, it cost the flour milling industry a great deal of pain. For many years, their facilities were not underutilized. Ultimately, as we know, go through various iterations of it, the ban on the importation of wheat came back, and wheat was allowed to be imported into Nigeria. Sorry, well, it came off, and wheat was allowed to be imported in Nigeria. Flour milling industry went back to milling flour. We had a similar thing with malted barley for the brewing industry, but I won't go through all of that. Let me use the example of the International Merchant Bank very, very briefly and quickly to cite again how national policy can influence things. Back in the 1970s, the fastest growing merchant bank, in fact, literally bank in the country, was a bank called IMB. IMB started life as First National Bank of Chicago. And how did they come to Nigeria? And this, if you listen, you'll see the, again, relationship between national strategy and corporate strategy. First, Chicago was a commercial bank in the US. It had no real interest in operating in Nigeria. But here was Nigeria suddenly earning a lot of money from crude oil. And this country that was making so much money in crude oil didn't have the sophistication to manage its revenues. One level 12 officer in central bank would just place the thing in a no interest account or something like that in Chase Bank or stuff. And people in First Chicago were watching this thing. So they thought, look, if we offer our services to Central Bank of Nigeria, we could make a lot of money for them and for ourselves. They tried to do that. But back in those days, Central Bank of Nigeria had a policy that they would not deal with any bank that did not have operations in Nigeria. So National Bank of Chicago, seeing the big business he could do working for Central Bank of Nigeria, decided to show some kind of presence in Nigeria, even though they didn't want to operate in Nigerian banking sector. Whereas they were a commercial bank in the US, the easiest way to operate without taking much risk in Nigeria was to enter Nigeria as a merchant bank. In those days, there was a strict difference between a commercial bank and a merchant bank. If you were a commercial bank, you were required to be, to have rural bank branches, do all kinds of things, agricultural loans, this, that. But merchant banks, could just be one flat in some building. So first, Chicago decided to enter Nigeria as a merchant bank. So you see how their corporate strategy changed dramatically because they just wanted to enter Nigeria, not to play in Nigerian banking system, minimum exposure there. In fact, Bismarck Rewande and a few of the young chaps who worked in those early days in that first Chicago will tell you that first Chicago was so uninterested in taking risk in Nigeria that every loan that they had to give in Nigeria had to be provided for 100% in the books of First Chicago, Nigeria. That is to say, they assumed that every loan they gave was lost. Well, it means that whatever business they're doing with Central Bank, they needed to make so much money that even if they lost everything in every loan they gave, they would still be making more than enough money. Now, they were so risk averse that not only were they going to provide fully in the bank in Nigeria for every loan they gave in Nigeria, which will be very few, but that in their books in Chicago, they will still provide 100% for what had been provided 100% for in Nigeria. That's how much they didn't want to play. They wanted to do a lot of central bank business. And central bank business was serious elabe for them. They made money. And so one day, Nigeria woke up, hey, wait a minute. Every bank in Nigeria, which is not owned up to 60% by Nigerians, must immediately sell 60% or the portion between what was owned by Nigerians and 60% to the federal government. In fact, in 1976, Nigerian government nationalized banking. It meant that Nigeria immediately needed to appoint, first of all, deputy managing directors for all the banks, because the federal government was now a majority shareholder in almost all of those banks. So they sent a young Nigerian who had just come from Chase Merchant Bank called Ebitimi Banigo to be deputy managing director of IMB. And within a year or two, they said they wanted to change the conditions. Chief executives now had to be Nigerians. And so Ebitimi Banigo became managing director of IMB. Before he became managing director, Ebitimi Banigo was already in a big fight with the First Chicago people. He said, the First Chicago people obviously not wanting to expose themselves in Nigeria, favored the liability side of the ledger. But if you want to grow the Nigerian economy, you favor the asset side. You create assets that will lead to economic advance. Companies grow, supported to get into business. First Chicago was not interested in whether Nigerian companies grew or did not grow or business grew. They just wanted to do their CBN business. So when government policy changed and Ebitimi Banigo became managing director of First Chicago, who now had to change name to IMB. Again, corporate strategy had to change at IMB as a result of change of national strategy in a direct sense. But the general nexus we'll talk about does not have to be direct. But I just want to give these examples. The MTN example we also know. Just in the last year or two, every possible government agency related to enforcement of anything was on the case of MTN, from the Attorney General's office to the Serious Fraud Office to the tax fellows to the National Assembly, everybody. I think we're very, very much close to the edge of MTN leaving. But MTN has been a very successful, very profitable company in Nigeria. Somehow they survived that. One or two more fines and MTN would have gone under. One of the things people don't know about the telecommunications industry in Nigeria is that there are two strong players and two fairly weak players. In the big GSM companies that we all know, we don't have quite the details. If MTN, under that pressure a year or two ago, decided to pull out or collapsed, Nigerian telecoms industry would have been in huge crisis because they carry a huge part of the weight. And if they crashed or left, the others would not be able to pick up the load, and the industry would have been in crisis. But did the regulators and the lawmakers quite understand those things? Had those things happened, what would have been the consequences? So it brings to mind a very important thing about national strategy, regulatory risk, and corporate strategy, which we'll speak to in a few minutes. But I wanted to use the examples of these companies to put in practical context what we're talking about. So it's not really a matter of theory or business theory. This is practical. This is real. These are companies that have experienced these things. And to put you in a position to ask yourself the question, if you were managing any of these organizations, what would you do? In fact, I'll just give you a simple example. Years ago, we had the United States government set up a policy called AGOA, the African Growth Opportunities Act. It was designed to allow more Africans to sell into the United States market around textiles and so on and so forth, so that African economies will get a chance for growing, because international trade is very restrictive in the bilaterals, and now WTO trying to create multilateral programs, but still disadvantaging African countries generally. So AGOA was seen as an opportunity for Africans to be able to partake more in the huge US market. What happened with AGOA? In some countries like Mauritius was one of the African countries that had the most advantage of AGOA. They got Asian textile companies to relocate into Mauritius, produce garments in Mauritius, and export from Mauritius into the United States of America. And they were doing quality stuff. I remember on a visit to Mauritius some years ago, we visited some outlets that were making Versace suits, or what was it? Not Versace, the other Italian big name. And I bought for $200 thereabouts a suit that would sell for about $5,000 in a high-end store in the US. And they were being manufactured in Mauritius. Mauritius grew dramatically on AGOA. One of the main targets to improve their economy out of AGOA was Nigeria. Nigeria got zilch out of AGOA because national strategy did not align enough for companies. One Asian player that came in to do textiles and garments in Nigeria, set up in Isolo, had a hard time, was running back and forth between the ministry and that place. After a while, the fellow just gave up, created his machines, and moved to Kenya. Today, that guy exports 10,000 blue jeans every day to Walmart. The guy that created his factory, which was in Isolo, and moved it to Kenya. Now, just having said those to give a sense for what really can happen, the question we're looking at here is superior performance of companies. What makes it possible? What are companies pursuing? How do they seek superior performance? What makes it possible? Well, one of the excuses, one of the reasons people are thought to outperform others is, oh, who builds the great mousetrap? Once you can build a great mousetrap, everybody will knock their ways to your house to get the mousetrap because everybody wants to catch mice. Well, we know that many people who have built great mousetraps and didn't quite get rich. So it's clear that just building a great mousetrap is not what might get your enterprise to succeed. I like to tell some interesting stories around a great mousetrap builder. There's a guy called Bill Lear. Most of you will recognize from the name Bill Lear that it sounds like the Learjet. That indeed is the guy who created the Learjet. Many people don't realize, in fact, that the guy called Bill Lear who built the Learjet was the one who gave a famous company called Motorola its name. Bill Lear used to work for a company called Galvin Manufacturing. Galvin Manufacturing, while he worked for them, was able to build a Victrola. Victrola was a record playing machine that would run in a motor car. That is the car radio. And so it became called a Motorola, a Victrola in the motor. In fact, Motorola then took the name. Galvin Manufacturing became Motorola. And the man who did that at Galvin Manufacturing was a guy called Bill Lear. But Bill Lear was an itinerant tinkerer. There's some guys who just keep tinkering and come up with, and so he left Motorola, went and started a company that built one of the first early private jets, if you will. And the company took his name, the Lear Jet Company. Eventually, he left the company that took his name and ended up in the Nevada desert tinkering with some forerunner of today's air conditioner. So, to build a great mousetrap is great, but it's not what gives you a sustainable, superior performing enterprise. I, for fun, have added Thunder Balogun versus JJ Okocha. I'm sure many of you on the call here are much too young to know Thunder Balogun. The myth when we were kids was that Thunder Balogun could take a shot from the middle of the field and it will tear the net on the other side, which is where his nickname Thunder came from. But poor Thunder Balogun played out all his life. I'm not sure he earned enough to pay school fees. But JJ Okocha, so I mean, just to make a small point about that. So, so the great mousetrap isn't all it takes to build a good. So what else does it take besides the great mousetrap? Well, surely there are those who think that if you're a great leader, you can lead an enterprise that would then be successful because of your leadership skill. Now, leaders are important, but sometimes, what it takes to achieve sustained success is much more than leadership skill. I've chosen to play a little game with two people who were succeeded by their children, who were great leaders, but their children ended up having more real success than them, and they were not perceived as great leaders. She's in trouble right now, but Aung San Suu Kyi, who is the leader of Myanmar that the military have ousted, obviously in a long struggle succeeded. But when you read the story, I mean, her success came out of how really popular her father was. Aung San Suu Kyi has written a lovely biography autobiography, which I read many years ago. In all the leadership attributes of our father, he never really got to lead Myanmar in any serious way. But the daughter, who was just a housewife in Oxford and took off to go to her to the burial, I think, of her mother, ended up becoming leader of the country. I have a very interesting relationship. I was in the 60s with a very rascally gentleman. He was my senior, called Dele Fajemiroku. Dele's father was the ultimate business man of that era, the Henry Stevens Group. He was president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, Nasima, everything. He actually died in a meeting in Abidjan. He was president of West African Chamber of Commerce. Now, many people think that Dele Fajemiroku is rich because of his father. But the truth, as Dele Fajem himself has now revealed in his biography published about 2 years or so ago, Dele Fajem is a much more shrewd businessman, a remarkable reader of persons, an effective business builder. He hasn't acquired the fame of his father as a business leader, but in reality has built a more lasting business legacy. So leadership is important, but it's probably not the only thing that makes businesses thrive. So what is it that makes enterprises thrive in a sustainable manner? Well, some say related to leadership, you've got to have emotional intelligence because about people. And that's so true. It's about people. But sometimes people who arouse people can make mistakes by being charged with emotion that get people going, but don't compute and tally properly. A classic example is Adolf Hitler, who was on his way to defeating literally Europe. Everything was all, we won't talk about the history of how he came to power, many terrible things he may or may not have done. But the one thing he should never have done, as he had taken over France, taken over almost all of Western Europe. Britain was tottering in one small corner, and the guy suddenly woke up and shot himself in the foot and turned east. People who were not fighting him and faced Russia. Of course, the Russian winter eventually humbled him, and the beginning of the end of Hitler had taken place. So what's really the most important thing to build a business in a sustainable manner? Well, that thing is strategy. If you do not plan to succeed, surely all kinds of things can happen to you on the way. So strategy, put very simply, is a methodic path to achieving a goal. What are the ways that we build strategy? And a decent understanding of it will show us the coincidence between business or corporate strategy and national strategy. So how do we build strategy to succeed? Well, it's what we call a hierarchy of strategies. And the first thing about strategy is the question, what business are we in? That's the very first question. Now, the slide before this. The first level, I was saying, is corporate strategy. Corporate strategy is about what business we are in. You've got to decide what kind of business you are in, first of all. You go back to the example of IMB. IMB, or First Chicago, was a commercial bank. It entered Nigeria. Yeah, this is where I want to be, yeah. as a merchant bank just to avoid exposure in Nigeria. The corporate strategy question is, what business am I in? In banking, for example, we are not just in banking. You can be in wholesale commercial banking. You can be in retail commercial banking. If you're in wholesale commercial banking, like Citibank, you cannot be in retail commercial banking, like Wema Bank, because the market woman in Dubai, Babel Leron, who is coming into that branch, if Arishekola is coming to the branch and they run into each other, Arishekola won't come back. So obviously, you can't be all things to all people. So you got to make a choice. What business you are in? Are you in wholesale commercial banking? Are you in retail commercial banking? Or are you in merchant banking? I like to tell you a story. When I got married some 36 or so years ago, there was a big man who gave me a wedding present. It was a check from a bank I had never heard the name of in England. It wasn't a check, actually. It was an envelope. So I got into London and I went to the bank, and the bank was in one flat just close to Park Lane, Hilton. And as I entered and I gave them I brought out the envelope, just seeing the envelope, the receptionist said, "Ah, Chief, how is Chief?" I thought, my goodness, even the man's envelope, they can recognize. Well, that bank, it turned out, was more than 200 years old and was just one flat in Park Lane in London. And they choose their clients. They don't advertise. I'd never heard of them. But they just choose their clients and they do very well. Thank you very much. So that's their banking. They stay there. They are high street banks all over there. They don't want to know. The high street banks know them. If they need them, they will go to them. So that's corporate strategy. When you make that choice of what business you want to be in, then the next important question you have to answer is, within this business that I want to be in, this area, how do I differentiate between myself and others so that I can perform superior to them? Well, there are some generic forms of this basic strategy. People can talk about whether you pursue a premium location in the value that you create, and therefore people come to pay for that. Like when you build a BMW, the ultimate driving machine, and somebody wants to drive that, he knows he pays a premium for it. Or when, low cost is your strategy. You just want to make it cheaper than anybody so that people will buy it because you are the cheapest. These are different tools for basic strategy, or different generic approaches to basic strategy. Now, we don't have the time to go into the details of that, and I like to do that sometimes, but that may be approach to basic strategy. Now, when you are clear in how you differentiate yourself from the others, which is what will attract your customer, the essential functions of the organization are essentially going to have their own strategy. And here the key is how you align those functions to drive your basic strategy. It is how well those functions align to the basic strategy that will determine consistency, that will give you the superior performance that you want. Now, the final level of this hierarchy of strategies, something you would not have found in any strategy book 40 years or so ago, is what is now referred to as institutional strategy. And institutional strategy derives from your culture, corporate culture. back in the 90s, Jim Collins and Jerry Porras finished a very long study of what made companies very, very successful over a long period of time. And what they found was that their corporate culture mattered a great deal. And so today, when you're constructing strategy, the whole business of your vision statement, your mission, and your big, hairy, audacious goals, and all of that, a critical part of your institutional strategy, decide all of this. Now, how you look at strategy, of course, depends on some paradigms within which you are functioning. Two dominant paradigms when you look at strategy. One is called the structure, conduct, performance paradigm. And that means that in that paradigm, generally out of structural economics, the nature of your structure determines how you conduct yourself within that industry sector, and the conduct usually determines your performance outcome. That is to say, if, for example, that the structure of the industry is an oligopoly, that is a few dominant companies playing in that area, like Nigerian banking was in the 70s and 80s, First Bank, Union Bank. So there's no pressure because it's an oligopoly, a few people in an old boy network. If you wanted to get money from your account, you arrived at 8 a.m., turned in your check, collected your tally number, and then went to have siesta in some corner. Whenever they were ready for you, they finished going through ledgers and everything and call you, come and take your money. Oligopoly made banking really terrible. So when federal government decided the Joint Structural Adjustment Program to kind of create a banking industry that will generate more deposits to be able to lend for economic growth, they decided to liberalize, lower the entry barrier. The company won't function, and there was no ATM in those days. So one guy, his business was just to go to the bank. He'll collect everybody's check, head to the bank, slept his way through the afternoon, and with everybody's money, you know. Now all of that changed because competition now came in. Now, that is conduct, oligopoly structure, conduct of process. Now, a competitive market, conduct, better service, consequence, performance outcomes. Okay, so if this be strategy, how does where you choose to locate affect outcomes? That is your context in which you play. How does where you locate? I give you a simple example of how where you locate affects outcomes. The most famous of the models in the structure, conduct, performance paradigm is generally known as the 5 forces model that was offered by a Harvard professor called Michael Porter. Basically, the Porter diamond features a number of forces that determine performance in many ways. Intensity of rivalry within the sector, for example. The threat of substitute products. If there are no threat of substitute products, obviously, you will not be under pressure relative to substitutes. But when there are so many substitutes, a soft drink, you prefer Coke, Fanta, Sprite, you know, buyer power power of the buyers. If you sell a generic product like pure water, power is in the hand of buyers. There's no way you can, you know, prevent people from going to your competitor and coming to use the same pure water basic, you know. All of these forces, you know, there's no time for this kind of presentation to go through all of those forces. All of those forces essentially now determine how you play. And it generally leads to the question of what is the most convenient location in a challenging environment. Now, here I'm coming to this framework now, very good. The 5 forces, you will see these 5 forces there: buyer power, intensity of rivalry, and all of those. In a typical environment like the United States of America, if you look at industry structure, you will see the outcomes that Michael Porter would predict based on these forces. If you are playing in a sector, for example, in the pharmaceutical industry in the US in the 70s, before Bill Clinton changed industry structure there with a few legislation, the pharmaceutical industry was typically a 5-star industry. What do we mean by 5-star industry? There is no pressure, you know, there's no entry barrier, or the entry barrier, sorry. If you get a patent on something, nobody else can produce it for the next 25 years or whatever the patent runs for. So you just make your money like, you know, you're sleepwalking for many years. My favorite example is a drug called Tagamet. Tagamet was a drug for ulcer. Before Tagamet, if you had an ulcer, the only thing that you could do was go for surgery, get cut up to treat the ulcer. How many people enjoy going for surgery? Hey, I got some ulcers, man. I gotta get myself some surgery tomorrow. Nobody enjoys that. So suddenly there's a drug that you can pop and it takes care of your ulcer. The Tagamet people made money like they invented it. Was the barriers to entry were high, so what's the substitute product? The surgeon's blade. What was the power of the suppliers? Well, what it made came from their intellectual property, the natural ingredients that they used to extract what went to Tagamet, basic plants or whatever it was. So there was no supplier pressure. So they were a 5-star industry. They made money like bandits in the pharmaceutical industry in the US in those days. Now, on the other hand, if what you produce is I don't know, some pure water, there's no barrier to entry. Anybody can enter the business any day. Substitute products are all over the place. Purchasing power, everything. So you are in a no-star business, literally speaking. So you can predict outcomes by just looking at that model. But if you came to Nigeria, you will not be able to predict outcomes because as simple as this, and this is a true example, and there was a friend of mine who was Minister of Industries. He was an Air Force Commodore, Air Commodore. And so he goes to play squash at this police place, you know, Balindi. No, sorry, in Falomo, their squash court. And one well-known businessman friend of his was playing squash with him. And he goes, "Pow!" He says, "Yeah, oh, by the way, do you know that the people are angry?" He says, "Yeah, why? What are they angry about?" "The cost of vegetable oil. They're very upset because of this ban on importing vegetable oil so that local manufacturers can be protected. People are really angry." The guy says, "Yeah, really?" Immediately after the squash, he tried to go and see the president and said, "We might have trouble or riots." So like, I said, "What? Vegetable oil?" Yeah. President immediately signs. Remove the ban on importation of vegetable oil. What my friend, the Air Force General, did not know was that the man having playing squash with him had a couple of shiploads of vegetable oil waiting to enter Nigerian waters. Immediately, the president signed and they released the thing. The man's shiploads of vegetable oil entered. The next week, the vegetable oil manufacturers went on the warpath, and government under pressure banned it again. But the man's ships of or shiploads of vegetable oil had entered the harbor. The man, again, I love those words, made out like a bandit. So, what's a businessman investing in Nigeria to produce vegetable oil going to do? You don't know if the barrier will be lifted or the ban will be lifted tomorrow. You don't know if somebody will get a waiver. So there's uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty, people tend to make two kinds of choices. They either do not make an economic move, they don't invest at all, or they hedge their risk. Now, hedging your risk means that your costs are going up, and those are called transaction costs. And when you have high transaction costs, you'll be less competitive relative to somebody who does not have high transaction costs, say, for example, somebody in Ghana. Now, this means ultimately that your performance will be low. So, how do you prevent this from happening? What we tend to have dominant in Nigeria, I called in that framework, from the framework that you see there, the one before this, the 3E framework, was out of my 1998 book, Managing Uncertainty. And that framework, the 3E framework, shows that what reduces this uncertainty is strong institutions. Question is, how do you build strong institutions? You build strong institutions when interested parties like business associations and all of that begin to mount pressures until there are boundaries of accepted conduct. And those boundaries of accepted conduct become really the institutions. You know that if you do this, there will be consequence. So now what we find generally, therefore, to come to the strategy interface framework, is that where you have a high level of uncertainty, businesses tend to go for flexibility strategy. What do you mean when you say flexibility strategy? Commit very limitedly, borrow, do all kinds of things. Give you an example. There are certain big companies make a lot of money in Nigeria, but own absolutely nothing in Nigeria. They can wake up in the morning and take their briefcase and leave. Big businesses, even in the oil business. Shell, in all the years Shell has been in Nigeria, Shell does not own a corporate head office. Freeman House, headquarters of Shell in Lagos, is owned by a church. Freeman, Birch Freeman, you know the rest of the story. Because to an extent, their strategy is a flexibility strategy. Not all the way, but to an extent in some areas. It goes much deeper with some companies. They lease, they rent everything. So they have very low commitment. Now, where you have an environment that is less problematic, you tend to have companies go for a strategy of commitment, long-term commitment. And I give you a very interesting example. In 1996, 97, I spent the year at the Harvard Business School writing that book, Managing Uncertainty. And there were two schools of professors at HBS at the time who were arguing about turbulent times and what the best strategy should be. a group of them said, in these kinds of times, you want flexibility, and my friend Pankaj Gemwat, who wrote the book Commitment, argued that essentially commitment comes from you win because you're committed. So you stay there, come rain, come shine, and eventually you weather the storm. And his favorite examples was like the conquistadors, the guys who burn their boats when they arrive in Latin America, because there's nowhere to run back to, because you're committed, you have no choice, you just keep going. So what's the point about this? What I found in my work in Southeast Asia is that companies, because there is a clear national strategy, because there are stronger institutions, tend to go for commitment, and they make long-term investments, and they grow those industries. Because in a place like Nigeria, for example, there is no clear national strategy. There's a high level of uncertainty. So the kind of corporate strategy choices that businesses tend to make, they go for flexibility. So you get the Indian businessman who enters Nigeria, borrows from Nigerian banks, does some quick deals, transfer pricing, gets his money out. If Nigeria is getting into trouble, he jumps in the plane and he's gone. That's so unlike what happened in Malaysia, for example. Because clear national strategy, stronger institutions allowed them to attract companies that went for commitment as strategy and had superior economic performance for the economy. So that's the essence of my deductions in the strategy interface framework. So how do we go from here as businessmen? My view is that we should try and play a critical role in influencing the environment. One of the best books on institutions has been written by a guy called Douglas North. And one of Douglas North's strong arguments is that it is the interested parties that build institutions. It's not something governments just enact. How do you drive growth? I'm not going to go much through this framework. This comes from my book, Why Nations Are Poor. So to find out how nations manage to get rich, you've got to ask yourself a number of questions. What kind of policy choices are made in those countries? How strong are the institutions? What's the nature of the human capital that's available? How much entrepreneurship, the culture of it, are you building up? What are the values in that country? And how do leaders influence culture and therefore all of these things? The key challenge is that business players in our country tend to pretend a great deal that they want to keep away from politics. Politics is problematic, is troublesome. But in some ways, and you don't have to go into politics, but you're a stakeholder. You should have a strong say in how the system runs. Many years ago, Tony Blair was Prime Minister of Britain, and the Confederation of British Industry finished a meeting one day and put out a statement: Norman Lamont must go. Norman Lamont was Minister for Industry. 1 week later, Tony Blair had dropped Norman Lamont. Sorry, it wasn't Tony Blair. It was John Major. John Major had dropped Norman Lamont as Minister for Industry. My argument is the private sector must get itself in a position to be able to do that, to influence the environment of business. Unfortunately, they don't do enough. People hide, these politicians, want to stay safe, don't want to raise our voices. That's why Nigeria is where it is today. About complicit middle. That what has happened to us is that we have run into this quote-unquote middle class scenario in Nigeria, where businessmen say, oh, we don't have anything to do with politics. In the night, they will give plenty of money to the worst kind of politicians because they think they're the kind of politicians who will win elections, and the environment just gets worse. And then we have state capture. We have systemic and systematic corruption of governmental processes to aid the material interests of a few who capture the state. If you go to South Africa, how much South African businesses are fighting the idea of state capture, where it is very, very low grade compared to Nigeria. But in Nigeria, capture is it. And we are where we are today, my dear friends, as a result of state capture in Nigeria. The Nigerian state has been hobbled. It is ineffectual. It cannot fight terrorists. It cannot get anything done. And the cost is bearing down on business. So in the end, business is a big loser as a result of this complicit middle phenomenon of pretending that you don't want trouble, you don't want politics, and then you allow the state to become a criminal enterprise that ultimately is against the interest of business. This is really the summary of my presentation, that you have a stake, and without becoming politicians or involved in politics directly, that you must show that you have an interest, and that interest includes having a corrupt-free system or low corruption system, if it's not completely free of corruption. You want a state that responds with strong institutions to ensuring a level playing field for all. I thank you, friends, and I hope that we can have a conversation that will let us learn some more from this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prof. I'm sure after today, after this session, most of us will have to take go to my YouTube page and watch this again and again, because you just had business school here, and there are so many things I saw there: commitment, flexibility, strategy, and all that. And you can bet on this on Monday when I sit down with my colleagues in the office. We have to look at this. Are we too committed, or should we be doing some flexibility strategy, or we should just look at how we can go to South Africa or take all our money somewhere else and everything? So thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We need to look at this and then look at how we can apply it. So we'll throw the floor open. Emmanuel, I think you need to spotlight Emmanuel too, so that we can have 3 people on this screen. Kenny. And before we do that, spotlight Emmanuel. And before we go on, I would just like to take a comment also from one of my senior friends and then mentor, although we've not been able to interact for a while right now, Dr. Bindo. Dr. Bindo, help me spotlight Emmanuel, and then also help me spotlight Dr. Bindo. And once you spotlight Dr. Bindo, let him just say hello to us before we get into the Q&A session. Quickly, Dr. Bindo. Emmanuel, while we wait for Dr. Bindo to be spotlighted, I think you have some things to say, so that
yes, Prof.
For the
Prof,
Q&A.
thank you so much for this business school. I like how you cited South Africa in the state capture. Apparently, the state capture, which turned the whole nation against the Gupta family, I've not seen a trace of business that was owned by Gupta family that was not delivering on their deliverables. However, even though they delivered, the private sector industries saw that or thought that one family should not capture everything. So as opposed to what is happening in Nigeria, where state capture
is institutionalized.
Yes, it's institutionalized, and they are not even delivering, and nothing is being done. But here, there's delivery, and people fought it and fought them out of the country. They're in Dubai. Perhaps PNA will meet the Guptas in Dubai when he gets there. They totally left Africa completely. You know, that example really struck something in my mind. And also the corporate, the fact that corporate individuals must get up to influence national strategy. I really have a lot of questions around here, which we will get into, because you said that Douglas North said that it is interested parties. Oh, okay, Dr. Bindu is here.
Dr. Bindu is here. Let us unmute Dr. Bindu before we get into the Q&A. Dr. Bindu, good to see you. It's been a while. Ramadan Kareem.
I was actually eating and listening to Prof. Prof, thank you very much. I think, you know, as someone who has navigated the academia, the public service, and then worked with politicians, I fully communicated with their presentation. I'm very sad that all the reviews that you have given, the example of the flour millers, the example of the banking sector, the example of even MTN that escaped, is sad for Nigeria, to be quite honest, to go through this very vicious circle. And where we found ourselves now is that we have so many people. If you pick every individual of a tiny little company, all these companies are failures. And that is why we're facing the bits and pieces that we're facing. But as again, as a public person, I think I'm a social entrepreneur who wants to see Nigeria as a one country with huge opportunities in terms of investment, employing young people, creating wealth, sharing and circulating wealth, that literally wasting away. This presentation, I hope, my good friend, you will send me the recording, and I'm going to play the recording. As Prof was making presentations, I was literally modeling poverty alleviation as my industrial interest. How do you reduce poverty in Nigeria? But then you listen to Prof again, and then you realize that corruption is a monster that is creating more poverty. And in Nigeria, we have both. Huge poverty, huge corruption, and the circles keep increasing as they bite each other. And I was imagining my humanitarian to ask her, what really is the interest of your industry? So I hope she would say, no, I want to reduce poverty. Then I said, okay, what is your strategy to actually reduce poverty? And then she will say, blah, blah. Then I will say, blah. Okay, what institutional landscape are you creating to achieve your strategy? What kind of policy changes that are threatening your industrial strategy? So the whole thing that Prof was saying, I was translating it publicly to actually see how we can move forward. But this is fantastic, and I'll use the recording, and I'll come back to Prof. Probably I'll be in Lagos to get a new master's in this.
Great to see you.
Yes, Prof. It's good to see you too, Prof. Thank you so much. I'm really sort of re-energized, and I believe that if we follow this, I wanted to contest as a governor in my state, but when I saw that you contested presidents, and I'm losing energy. But listening to you now, I will come and get more lessons to see how do we translate this to actually show an example. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Bindul. It's always fun to have Dr. Bindul around whenever he's.
Sir, your audio is off.
Yeah, audio gonna leave.
Okay, am I on now?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, good. I was saying that whenever you have Dr. Bindul around, it's always good you give him the microphone because his depth of understanding is on a different level entirely. So thank you so much, Dr. Bindul, for, and then to know that he even started from the beginning, it's so encouraging. And then he's picking up a lot of stuff. And this is what we're saying here. You're not just listening to a teaching, you're also looking at how do I apply it in my own industry? How do I apply it in my office? Whatever has been said, how do I change my strategy, my thinking, my plan, and everything going forward? What do I need to discuss on Monday morning with my staff? And based on all this teaching, that's why we'll make this thing available quickly on YouTube. Once we put it on YouTube, you can listen to it again and then bring up a discussion on Monday morning during your strategic session, your management meeting. This is the reason why we put this together. Something practical, something that you can, something usable, something applicable that you can use immediately and change things. So if you have some questions right now that you need to ask so that you can get more clarity, please do. Remember, this is all about keeping your business in business. Keeping your business in business. This is what the webinar is all about, keeping your business in business. And for a very long time, that's what we're talking about here. Please note that. And then we'll take questions. And then I think Emmanuel was talking along a path before Dr. Bindu spoke. And then we'll just take Emmanuel, let Emmanuel continue. And
okay, thank you so much, sir. I think the remarkable thing about Prof's delivery is the applicability about the knowledge that he brings to the table. You just think that he kind of peeped into your life and your economy, and is telling you what you can do to apply it just around you. When he talked about the fact that it is interested parties who build institutions, not government, because I remember during COVID, I wrote a proposal to Julius Malema where I was telling him how much they were losing by not providing certain kind of visas for foreigners and how it was not helping the infrastructures and investment. And I did a brief calculation how certain kind of visas will make people more committed in the society and also protect the infrastructures around the economy and the rest of them. So, but perhaps he was not the right person I should have sent it to. But hearing you talk about interested parties, not just government, triggered something in me again, that we must not wait for government. Anybody who is interested in an economy, who is interested in a national strategy, must bring whatever he has to the table. And the flexibility strategy you talked about, which entails lack of commitment, I could see it manifest around foreigners around. So I wanted to ask for people who are Nigerians, who, sometimes you don't know how uncertain and unsafe the country is until you go out. And sometimes you look at people who are outside get more news than people who are inside. So you are outside, you are supposed to be flexible because it's not your land. You're supposed to be moving capital to your land. And now you get news that where you're supposed to be moving the capital to is also not safe and uncertain. What do you advise such a person to do? Because I know there are people from different countries here listening, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that is really interesting. The thing about strategy options between, say, flexibility and commitment is that it's not that one is good and the other is bad, but there are consequences of each one, and depending on what you want. I mean, the joke about it at the time around the Harvard Business School is that I think early in 1997, I think about February, my friend Pankaj Gamwat wrote a paper in which he said that commitment to flexibility can actually be a commitment strategy. Oh. That a commitment to flexibility can actually be a commitment strategy. You are committed to just being, not committed. Wow. And that is also a commitment strategy. The real thing about whether you choose commitment over flexibility is to recognize that there is consequence for your every behavior for the choice that you make. I'll give you an example. During that period that I was at the Harvard Business School, there was one of the strongest performers in the New York Stock Exchange, was a company called Nucor. Now, strange it sounds, Nucor, which comes from Nuclear Corporation of America, was actually a steel company. Why? How does the Nuclear Corporation of America become the most effective company in mini mills? Well, at starting point in their history, and then they moved to mini mills, and they built mini mills around the country. At the time, the guy who ran Nucor was a guy called Ken Iverson. And the strategy that Nucor pursued was a low-cost strategy. That means that everything they do must be low cost. That's on which they win. Okay. Now, Ken Iverson himself was a multi-millionaire, stock options, everything, very wealthy man. But because their strategy is low cost, he would never stay in an $80 motel, even though he was a multimillionaire. Now, when he came to speak at this Harvard Business School class, he was a guest of Harvard Business School. So they were putting him up. They checked him into the Charles Hotel. Those of you who know Cambridge. And he said, no, he won't stay there. He has to go to a motel where the thing was much, because he wanted to be faithful to his strategy. Almost the same thing years later, IKEA. IKEA was, chief executive was 6-footer, basketball player guy. But IKEA's strategy was low cost, their product and everything, low cost strategy. The poor guy traveled hundreds of thousands of miles around the world in economy with his long legs because he was staying consistent with strategy. But you see, what happens with us is that we announce one strategy and our behavior shows something else. And so our people don't follow because there's confusion between our behavior and our strategy. That very often happens. But to go to the question of institutions, which I think is so important, you see, an institution is not a decreed something. Institutions evolve. They are not enacted. You can enact a decree, Central Bank of Nigeria, but people won't behave as expected because you've just enacted a decree. But if it evolved from their behavior and their learnings, this is why one of the best definitions of institutions, which comes from the old institutional economic school, is a very simple one that says institutions are settled habits of a community. Settled habits of a community. You see, when a Nigerian goes to the US or the UK, behaves very well, obeys traffic lights and all of that, he comes back to Lagos and does exactly the opposite. In fact, my joke is the airport. In fact, I used to joke in class that if you want to know about institutions, check out what kind of water the airlines give people to drink, because it's coming from them. You know, they drink some water and the aeroplane and their behavior changes. You know, the guy who was fighting at Murtala Mohammed Airport, shoving over people, climbing over everybody, gets to London, suddenly he's of very good behavior. What's the problem? What changed in him? He drank that water on the airline, I guess. But the truth of the matter is that he knows the consequence of behaving differently. I have a famous story. It was Easter Sunday. I never forget it. But how many years ago? Easter Sunday, like 10 years ago. I was flying to London. Like 6 Nigerian governors were on that flight. They were going to New York, to Washington. I think there was an exit meeting on power, energy. I don't know why all the governors in Nigeria were going for it. Chibika Mechi was on that flight. the then governor of Central Bank, Lamine Sanusi, was on that flight. Mimiko, at the airport. It turned out Professor Wole Soyinka was also flying that night, but he wasn't on our flight. He was on Lufthansa also. But when he was passing and in front of the British Airways lounge, you thought that there was, all those governors with their 1,000 aides holding their phones and everything, and you just mayhem. So we got on this plane. I was actually sitting next to the now late former foreign minister. He was then foreign minister Ashiru on that flight. So we arrived London, and then suddenly everybody was carrying their own bag. Everybody was being very. When we entered the elevator, I remember Amechi, Lamido Sanusi, a number of us were in the elevator, and I started laughing. So Chibika Amechi said, "Prof, okay, tell us what you want to tell us." And look at all of you behaving like human beings here. What prevented you from behaving this way in Lagos? They say, Prof, but you see, if they behave any differently, they will get the consequence. That's why the American who was behaving very well at traffic lights and everything drives in Lagos for 1 week, begins to break the rules because there's no consequence. So institutions about consequence management, but it really comes to the American after he has seen the effect of consequence after a period, almost tailored to behave the right way because that is a habit of the community. But if he goes to a place for a while, he sees that it's not the habit of the community, he too will do the wrong thing if he gets a chance to do the wrong thing. And that's why institutions really evolve. The example I think I wanted to give about in practical terms in Nigeria of how institutions evolve, foreign exchange market. Many of you on this call may not quite know, but foreign exchange management was a nightmare in Nigeria. Central Bank approved every transfer of money from Nigeria. It went back. It was a story. Anyway, companies had to have so many bank accounts to get foreign exchange. When it began to even ease. Then in 1984, the Harvard Business School Association of Nigeria had scheduled a webinar, which I was a speaker on the budget. After Abacha took over, it was postponed. Then Abacha announced the budget. Oh, we are going to roll back all the gains of liberalization of the foreign exchange market to now be allocated to manufacturers because they are more important to the economy, now be allocated. I was on the National Council of Man at that time. I was on the Council of Lagos Chamber of Commerce. I was on the Council of NECA. And when I heard the day before I was going to make this speech, it was at the Sheraton, that the president of Man had welcomed this wonderful new development of special allocations directly to manufacturers, and they will get priority. I shook my head, and at the conference, whatever it was called, seminar, I said, you know what? I give manufacturers 6 months, and they will regret the position that our president, because I was a member of the council, took on television last night. 3 months later, manufacturers were begging that they didn't want any special privilege because you know that loophole will be capitalized on. No manufacturers will get the thing. There will be some chiefs and some allergies who will get the foreign exchange and then sell it to manufacturers for a premium. It happened exactly like that. So individuals, manufacturers, traders, after a while, came to an understanding, look, let's stop looking for advantage. manufacturers, this, that, because it only gives opportunities for abuse. The players, the interested parties themselves were the ones who said, please let us have a foreign exchange market. We don't want allocation of foreign exchange anymore. This is why what happened in Nigeria in the last couple of years was a tragedy. Is my friend, but this business of multiple exchange rates is the biggest disservice that's been done to the Nigerian economy in a long time.
Multiple exchange rates is a major source of uncertainty in Nigeria.
Yes,
major source. So Oluwafemi is raising his hands. Can we take Oluwafemi, sir?
Thank God, Prof said that commitment to flexibility is also commitment.
No, he didn't say. He was quoting someone.
Well, okay. I will have
the ultimate author of the book Commitment, Pankaj Gemowat.
Good. I will have to look at that. How can you stay committed to flexibility so that you can also have commitment as your strategy? So can we spotlight Oluwafemi Adeniba quickly so that he can ask his question? Spotlight him, please, and then unmute him. For those of you who are here, we would like to be with us in Dubai for 2 days. We still have Dubai in focus. So the new date is actually for business people is 31st of May and 1st of June. 31st of May and 1st of June. I mean, last day of this month and the first day of next month for business people. So I'm sure my people are typing on the chat room right now how you can be, and the numbers you can call, the people you can talk to if you want to be part of us. We'll play a video of what we enjoyed last year so that you can see as we move forward. But now, Femi, good to see you.
Yes, sir.
It's nice to have Femi's younger brother here today.
My tenured prof, sir. Thank you for bringing in the man angle, because I was about asking you before you delved into man. Quoting you, interested and committed parties build institutions. What happened to man? Where did man, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, where did it go wrong? It wasn't formed by any decree or act. It was formed by companies, organized. But I sense strongly that man is achieving a purpose for which they came together. So, and being formed in 1971, I know you have some history as a board member in MAN. What went wrong with MAN?
Let me tell you a very funny story. You know, one of the big problems that manufacturers faced at a point in Nigeria's history was multiple taxation. You know, you cross every border, the state government throws all kinds of things at you, so their products, distribution, and all of that. So at one meeting of the Council of Man, the president at the time, Laji Hassan Adamu, who was known to be very friendly, very close to the vice president at the time, Admiral Augustus Aihumu, was mandated to take the petition of manufacturers to the vice president and to say to him, look, you are the coordinating person responsible for the states. Can you please draw these governors to order, call them to order and prevent this thing from happening? It's disrupting manufacturers and blah, 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 blah. So he said, yeah, in fact, he's going to see him this evening. He will take the thing and he will, and everybody was happy. They clapped for him. Yeah, that's why we have a connected man as our president. So, well, as most people know anyway, it wasn't a secret. I was quite friendly with Admiral Aihumu myself. So I chose to go and visit Admiral Aihumu that night. as it turned out, as I was driving in, the president of mine was driving out. And when I got into the vice president's living room, he was sitting with the then Rivers State governor. Was group captain, still a commodore, anyway, Ernest Adileye. And so the night of news will start. And this is really the story of Nigeria. It was during this whole thing about wheat that I talked about and flour mills of Nigeria. And the governments had been asked to, the flour millers had been asked to start growing wheat. And the government gave incentives to state governments to grow wheat. Kaduna was said to have the climatic conditions for growing wheat. So they got so much money from the federal government to facilitate their wheat development that, the other governors were so envious. Within a few weeks, Benue said the conditions are here too. So Benue began to get money. Then the next states said they too could grow wheat. So when then we're watching the news, the vice president, who was watching the news with us, was being reported as having visited the wheat fields of Kaduna. So, and the television cameras, as they panned fields, was the entire state was just one non-stop wheat field. And Admiral Ikomu said, "Aye, not the life of Nigeria, shall." That was the vice president himself. and then Governor Adile said to him, "SSC, sir, we can grow with him, but that costs." So you see, the whole thing was everybody knew it was a rent-seeking thing. Anybody who had enough access could get opportunity to get money. So I then said, by the way, I saw Hassan Adamu leaving. I hope you and him have sorted out this double taxation thing that he came to. He said, he didn't mention anything about double taxation at all, or multiple taxation. So, am I saying this? Now, I had a very peculiar way of relating to many of those military officers. I had been very friendly at that same time with Raji Rasaki, who was governor of Lagos. And a similar delegation had gone to see Rasaki. So on Saturday, I stopped by Rasaki's place. He used to live at that time at the governor's residence on Azik John, Ikeja. And when I reached his place, I said, so I hope you have helped us sort out this thing. He said, "This is your people. You know when your people came here, you know what they were asking me?" I said, "No." He said, "They were asking for land allocation in Lekki for themselves." That is the delegation that went to go and discuss. So what's my point? My point is that I think it's something that happened with oil and the whole culture of rent, economic rent seeking, and people in power dispensing rent. And so even businessmen, any chance they got to be near power, their first thought was their own personal rent of the system, rather than the collective good. I don't know. It's not a personal credit, but in both cases, I was the one who actually tried to get Ihomu and Raji Rasaki to understand what the issues were. But the official delegation that was supposed to have gone to see them were pursuing self-interest.
Wow.
So I think some of those things affected the growth of man.
Okay. Can man still be savaged?
Oh, it can. I'm sure that they are doing. They're not as things are not. They still function. At least I know that can be better, but they still function. What I want them to do is to stop being afraid of authority. That's the thing that I think annoys me about businessmen in Nigeria and individuals, citizens. The people The attitude of authority is the neighborhood to extract rent or be careful lest the power of this authority visit you. But you already have collective power. Look, let me give an example. In 1993, when the elections were annulled, at the governing council of NECA, and I remember this meeting very well because the person sitting right next to me was the managing director of WAPCO, West African Portland Cement Company, Lafarge, who retired. Joe Makoju was Dangote. Joe Makoju was sitting right next to me. And I get up and I said to him, at least 50, 60 CEOs of major companies in the country at the time sitting in that room. I said, you know, if all of us in this room said to Babangida, look, this thing you're doing is destabilizing the environment of business. If you don't do the right thing, we all shut our businesses down because this is going to affect our business. I mean, they were all looking at me, you know, like, what's wrong with this boy? I was, you know, pretty young back then. I think must have been saying like, he's a model, you know, he doesn't know what he's talking about, you know. The only person who got up and supported me, by way of irony, was the managing director of Cadbury Nigeria Limited, Dr. Christopher Kolade, on that meeting. And if we did it, Babangida would have buckled.
Thank you, sir.
Confidence, boldness. I think it's a major. It's really lacking in the corporate culture. But sir, just a question, by the way, before we take the next question. Usually, when politicians in Nigeria want to go for an election campaign, they usually have 7-point agenda, 4-point agenda, you know, as many as they can recall. My question is point agendas a strategy or just a mission statement? If it is just a mission statement, how can we deduce strategies from people? Because we are also electorate. Most people on this platform have influence on other people, you know. So how can we deduce strategy from aspirants so that we are sure this person can actually do this, not just giving us an agenda?
Okay, Emmanuel, before we allow Prof go to that angle, yes, where we may not come back from, I think we should we should look at the question. Somebody's asking something about flexibility. I'm trying to see the chat. Flexibility, commitment to flexibility about contract staff. If you can see that, Emmanuel, just look at the chat room. There was a question around that.
Yes, and we say running contract staff is an example of flexibility strategy. That's from Joel. If yes, how does it actually benefit the company? Kindly share your opinion, sir.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. The contract staff business is classic case of a flexibility approach. But like every strategy, it has its trade-offs. It has its weaknesses. Clearly, if you look at how much companies save from having contract staff, it's huge. Imagine that these 300 people who are contract staff were full-time employees 3, 4, 5 years, and you had to let them go or whatever. The amount of money you will pay them, you know, can just completely, you know, cripple you. So as contract staff, you save on that. But what's the trade-off? Do you have the kind of passionate commitment from them to service of your customer? As a friend of mine who likes to say that your your customers will treat your best customers according to how you treat them. Something like that. That is, your best customers will get from those people who you treat poorly such poor treatment that they wonder whether you should be servicing them. Yeah. So in the long term, those firms may be worse off. In the short term, they are very good because of the savings. So you have to look at the trade-off. What is your preference, and take a bearing. Of course, in some countries, the law limits how much you can treat human beings in a particular way. So those are things that you calculate into the whole equation also. But the bottom line is that it is a flexibility strategy for sure to enable you, manage your costs and manage the trouble of managing people, because very, very frank, the biggest challenge for any organization is how you develop your human capital. 40 years ago, human resource function was a weak function in the organization. It was where you sent the secretary you didn't know what to do with anymore. She's been a loyal secretary for many years, and you need to reward her. So you either sent her to public relations or you sent her to human resources. And years ago, Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria invited me to speak to them. And I started by saying, the personnel function is dead. And they kind of looked at me and thought, oh my God, this guy is demented. The guy has come to insult us. I repeated it 3 times, the personnel function is dead. Okay, decided to tolerate me and listen to me. I said, what does personnel do? You have a clocking card. Start work at 8 o'clock. Anybody who comes past 1 after 8 3 times gets a warning letter, gets this disciplinary, gets fired after X number of whatever. So guy comes in, clocks in. One guy is always there by 6:45 every day. And it's supposed to start 8. After 50 years of never coming late, suddenly he's late 4 days in a row. Into the rules, so he's fired. So you fire that kind of guy. What do you think it does to the morale of the entire organization? All people who know that this guy is the most consistent guy, he comes early. The manager in his office on the 5th floor doesn't know any of this, but the direct report, who sees that guy every day, knows that this guy is extraordinary, will say, look, something is wrong. What's it that's wrong? Why is this guy late 4 times in a row? He's not like him. So instead of implementing fire the guy, he calls the guy and says, hey, guy, what's going on? And the guy refuses to talk. Says, look, what is going on? Something's wrong. Refuses to talk. The guy's best friend, who he goes to lunch every day with, he knows that guy because he sees them going to lunch. He calls his best friend and says, what's wrong with this guy? This is not him. He says, well, he's carrying a big cross right now. The most important person in his life is his wife. And guess what? She's just been diagnosed with breast cancer. Wow. The way that he then treats the whole matter is different from the way that a personnel guy on the 5th floor will treat it. And then I talk to the personnel people, I say, but you know what? The human resource officer in an organization is about to become the most important person in the organization. Well, that yesterday's personnel manager should just basically be a consultant supporting these direct bosses. And that person will find that finding the people, the best people, essentially developing them through the organization and planning their exit may be the most important thing to corporate success. Almost prophetically, 20 odd years after I made those statements, personnel function is the biggest growth in salary in Europe, because suddenly people begin to realize the HR guys are the key to the organization's success. So I think that these things really matter to pay attention to, and they are the things that determine where we'll be. Okay.
Okay, I think there's a hand raised, and then before we take that, I don't know whether my guys are ready to just show a little bit of what we enjoyed in Dubai last year, so that we can all see it. For instance, we will be having Prof also with us in Dubai, and then that's going to be something else. We had him for 2 days, and it's possibly we have him for more than 2 days this time around. So we'll just, if they're ready, they just let me see their hands, or else we'll take the question that is showing for. So just watch. Okay, while they're trying to get themselves together, I think what we just do right now is to take the question. Morakiyo, please. If you guys can spotlight Morakiyo for me. And then also, if he has this video on, you can ask his question.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your time, Prof. It's an honor to be under your ambience today, because it's very, very eye-opening. My question more relates to the present day. There is a wave of a new economy developing in Nigeria, and it's an entirely service industry, the fintech industry, even leading to blockchain, down to cryptocurrency and all that. And some countries around the world are even adopting, even so many top companies right now are accepting cryptocurrencies for some of their services. We heard of Tesla, we heard of Amazon, who just bought into it, and some of those other companies who just started taking crypto for some of the services that they render. And these happen to be presently a huge market for Nigerians, and largely the Nigerian growing young population that everybody have always been putting, everybody have added into the statistics of 63% Nigerian youths that are capable to work, and then that fall into the bracket of the of statistics. How can this industry navigate the terrain and the policies that the government put in as barrier to even be so that they can employ, even bring in more money, more investment into Nigeria? Because recently we heard of Space Tackle just sold their company for large sum of money, millions, and then some Flutter Waves that just raised about $1 billion worth as a company. These are companies that started barely 4 or 5 years ago, and there are banks even in this country that barely their capitalization. Thank God for Soludo's capitalization several years ago. They might never have clocked the 25 billion capital base that they are working with. How can we help such industry, a service industry, low cost, high income transfer, speed, pace, interconnectivity, and everything around all that? There is a chance for Nigeria to emerge easily as it transits easily from third world into first world. How can we help such an industry? That's where my question is.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
thank you very much. It's so important. You know, when change is coming, the people who manage, authority people, are usually scared of a new way. In fact, one of the parts of the presentation that I kind of like skipped towards the end because I didn't want to carry on some more was talked about Haiti. One of the ways that I harass MBA students is ask them to tell me the country that had the highest per capita income in the world in 1789. For several years, no MBA class got it right. Until one year, one person did, and I was shocked pleasantly. And I said, you know, fantastic. The guy was very happy. Halfway through the class, he had such guilt trip. He said, well, let me confess something. I said, what? He said, I was somewhere where you said that a year ago. So anyway, but that's the learning. Which country was this? Country was Haiti. Haiti had the highest per capita income in the world, 1789. How come Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere today? Very simple. Haiti was a plantation economy. And in the plantation economy era that it was in at that time, because it had great sugarcane plantations on a per capita basis, Haiti was the highest GDP per capita in the world. And then the Industrial Revolution hit, and Haiti missed the Industrial Revolution and was missed by it, and it became what it is today. I think that we all have a duty to educate authority about the importance of responding to change in a way that has more knowledge behind its sale, and being able to be a little more oriented to a little risk. But people like control, and control makes them. One of the greatest things happened in my opinion is blockchain technology. Why? The thing with blockchain technology is that everybody has the same information at the same time. And the real truth is that blockchain is the biggest hammer blow to corruption, because the information asymmetries that allow people to make corrupt gain are smothered by the very concept of blockchain technology. We must all make an effort to collectively educate public authority to learn that this is the way to go, and that government makes a fundamental error of judgment in being that negative on blockchain technology. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that nothing is more difficult to bring about than a new order of things, because those who profit from the old order would do everything to prevent a new order from coming about. And those who profit from new order do not do enough, and that's the part I want to emphasize. Those who could profit from new order do not do enough to make it happen, because man is incredulous in his nature, not wanting to try new things until he has witnessed experience of it. And that's what we're dealing with here. And so, as a collective, we all should try very hard to educate authority, decision makers, to recognize that in not aligning with change. We could become victims of what is called Rewan's axiom, which is unless the rate of learning in an organization is greater than or equal to the pace of change in the environment, that organization is progressively becoming a dinosaur. Nigeria could be the next Haiti if the rate of learning in authority systems does not outpace the rate of change that is taking place in the environment, or at least be equal to it. So I agree with your worry, and I think that it should be either to change those who make decisions, to have people to at least help educate them to understand the dynamics of the environment that is changing.
Okay, don't worry, just take it. Just take it away. Just take it away. Okay.
It was a great opportunity.
Bring me back. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Emmanuel, do we have any other question?
No, not that I can see now. No, I think it's a good time to take the video.
Okay, can we just play the video now? Let them just see the video, what you stand to enjoy when we get to Dubai. And then, like I said, last day of this month and first day of next month is for the business think tank. And while the pastor's think tank will be on the 2nd and 3rd of June, immediately after the business think tank. So if you have the video, let's play that so that we can see.
Wow, that's an amazing presentation. Sir, we can't hear you, and the video wasn't quite smooth.
Okay, I think it's what. Do you want to? Are you saying we should play it again or what? Oh, I think some other people saw it. I could see a wow from someone on the comment.
I saw it.
Okay, probably it was your network, Emmanuel. And we want you to come from South Africa.
Okay, sir.
Okay,
no,
good.
the video played, but some of them. Do we have some questions? Should I ask some questions?
Yeah, go ahead. If you have one, why not?
Yeah, somebody's asking. Olusoji is asking, what is your outlook on the Nigerian currency? Do you see us returning to 300 naira levels over the next 3 to 5 years?
Look,
do you think the increase in local refinery capacity will bring a significant change?
Okay, all right. Now, first of all, let me say, as a general position, that the nominal, numbers with currency isn't my problem. It's not my issue. It is your purchasing power that really matters and what it's doing for your economy. Look, back in the 70s, the Japanese yen was, what, 200 and something to the dollar. And each time it was going to appreciate, the Japanese got nervous. They didn't want the thing to become stronger because they were exporting. And when their exchange rate is weak, they can sell more abroad, and was boosting their exports. So they wanted their currency to remain weak. The world had to pressure. I remember how unhappy they felt when the yen went to 90 something to $1. So let me just make that basic clarification about nominal values. The problem with the Nigerian currency is that Nigeria is not producing anything. Well, I take that back. Not that it's not producing anything, it's not producing enough. And it has the capacity to produce so much more. If there's any real evil that has been done to Nigeria is that a very weak political class that just wanted to gain without pain, easy money, take oil money, and squander, just failed to create the context for production. Nigeria used to produce. In the 50s, when politicians took over, Nigerian politicians took over from the British, the Nigerian economy was not industrialized. In the desperation to industrialize the economy, politicians created all these industrial estates. You know, Ikeja was the first one, which Obafemi Awolowo created, and the East wanted to match him, you know, toe to toe. So they created Aba and Transamadi in Port Harcourt, and the North created Kakuri in Kaduna. Bompai was accelerating in Kano, and we saw production rise in this country. We saw agricultural production, which we started from the granite pyramids, everything. A little oil enters, and we have this unfortunate convergence, what I call the dangerous alchemy of soldiers and oil. And since then, production has been sadly almost forgotten. It used to be subnational governments, the regions, drove economic expansion. Today, the state governors do nothing, just collect half of the money, put in their pocket as what you call it, a security vote, and then pay salaries. And it's so sad that very little production is being pushed. So that's the real issue in the Nigerian economy. You can't force the exchange rate without something to back it. At the moment, I'm afraid the direction of the exchange rate is the other way. Could get to 1,000 to 1, by the way. Could get there, unless we dramatically change the thrust of the productive capacity of this economy. That's what we must really focus on.
Wow.
Thank you. That Japanese.
To 1,001?
Yes. That Japanese example was classical. PNA, we can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Sorry about that. I was saying 1,000 to 1. That's scary.
Scary, but possible.
Whoa.
Can also be an advantage.
If we begin to produce, to export.
Wow.
I think this perspective is really incredible because it changes the whole mindset that the currency is actually means weakness for the nation. It can actually be a plus for the nation.
Yeah, if you produce, that's the key for export. Yes. That's really the key.
Wow.
Okay. Well, okay. I can see the hands of Christian. Christian Okaro's hand is up.
Yes, Christian Okaro. Christian Okaro, you can please unmute yourself.
Can you spotlight Christian Okaro, please?
And can you also turn on your video so
yeah,
we can spotlight you? Okay.
Yeah, Prof, good evening. I really enjoyed this topic. For me, it was like going back to the campus, like sitting down and listening to strategic courses, because I did my master's in strategy, so in Switzerland. So for me, I was like, I really understood the point you are making. And my question is, I want like something practical to be the answer, not like another, let's say, strategic theory we are used to in the class or in the lecture room. So when you look at big companies, they can afford to outsource some of the things they do. They can afford to adopt to different flexible strategy, which of course has its own cost. and has its own implications, as you said. But as a startup or a growing company in Nigeria, you don't have that, let's say, brand equity to leverage in terms of making yourself attractive for a third party to be a cause on your behalf, like staffing and all that. So what solution or what alternative do you think that growing companies or startup companies in Nigeria can maybe through extra you think could help them to become this flexible, as you suggested, be able to leverage it in their strategy? Thank you.
Okay, Prof. Just before you go, if you don't mind, can you pen that down so that I can get the last person on the call, and then we can answer the two at once, and then we'll close for tonight, if that is okay. So, do you want to spotlight Grace or Annie?
Yes, yes, I'm doing that now. Grace, can you unmute and can you? Okay. Pastor Nie, are you saying that my question will not be answered?
No. You are my guy here, so you can always answer your question. Ask your question. But Grace, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Good evening, Prof. Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and I was really enriched with the lecture. Actually, I was very much affected with the question that Emmanuel asked, and I really want that question to be answered. So that's why I raised my hand. The question about knowing how to understand where these leaders are going to, all these aspirants, where they're going to as regards their vision for the country and the strategies they want to pull together for the country.
Okay, awesome. So Emmanuel, you guys are asking the same question now, which is good. There's a question on the chat. Emmanuel, can you say it?
Yes. Yes, Ben is saying I work in the tile manufacturing industry and suggested exports to my management. And after a brief analysis of the bottlenecks and the export process, I just had to abandon the idea for now. The industry has a shortfall of over 250 million square meters in Africa as at 2019, and yet Nigeria cannot export to even fellow African countries. Is quite unfortunate. Okay. So is this a question?
Thank God that is not a question. Thank God that is not a question, because I want to close.
Yeah, but it is actually a very important question. It's a question, a very important one.
Good. So, Prof, take that. Emmanuel, you want to ask your question, or your question has been asked by Grace?
Yes, it has been asked, yes.
So, Prof, we're all yours.
Okay. All right, thanks. We'll start with the Emmanuel Grace question. A lot of grace will be coming to Emmanuel for this question. I think that the first thing to bear in mind is that 7-point agenda, this is just propaganda, and they get away with it because nobody interrogates them. The person says to you, 7-point agenda, he will ensure that water is available to everybody. He will ensure that roads will go from here to the Atlantic and all of that. Ask him, how are you going to raise the money? What is the impact of doing it on associated things? Where are you trying to take quality of life? Take the what do you call them? Goals, SDGs. And say, what impact will this have on SDG 1, 2, 3, whatever? You will know that the guy doesn't know what he's talking about. That he has just been told 7 things to blah, blah, blah on, which is often the case. People have to be able to, you see, strategy or a strategic question has consequence for other questions. So if you are going to build X number of roads, for example, because we like roads a lot, and one of the most terrible things happening in Nigeria now is that the governors are all building airports. It is the most sad thing. Elite get all excited. Oh, we have one airport in Anambra. Hogwash. Nonsense. You know how many hospitals that airport would have built? Anambra people are dying. They don't have hospitals. And Willoughby now wants an airport in his village or next to his village so he can land there. But the elite all get very excited. Oh! From the airport, you look across the landing, you see the one taking off in Asaba, just across the water. When I go to Detroit, I stay with a cousin of mine somewhere around Pontiac, Lake Orion. The drive to Detroit Metro is 1.5 hours. And then we're building an airport every 5 minutes away. Doesn't make any sense. But Nigerians celebrate those kinds of things. And that's part of the tragedy of a non-questioning elite. To say, what is the contribution of this airport to XYZ? It's been touted cargo airport. Sure, it might turn out to be a great idea, or it's a trading. How much cargo is moved by air today? And all of that, you know? So we don't interrogate them, we don't question them, we don't ask questions. So they get there with egotistical programs. The other day, they said they're going to spend 1.5 billion to refurbish Port Harcourt refinery. At the Peter side, who is leading the conversation for the government on planning, says that money will build 12 world-class hospitals. Does Nigeria need a world-class hospital or does it? And we're going to spend amount of money to build us 12 of it to refurbish a refinery when we know that 20 years from now, few cars, if any, will still be running on fossil fuels. When we know that Aliko Dangote is building this one in Lagos, yes, we don't want him to have a monopoly, but you can sell that Port Harcourt refinery for $1 to somebody on the in the condition or whatever that he brings in whatever to do it and employs at least X number of people, produces X number of. There is $17.1 trillion at 0 or negative interest rates in the world today, out there. The only reason that money is not in Nigeria is we're not doing the right things. You create the appropriate incentives. You don't need to take our budget to go and fix a refinery that is unfixable. And I'm willing to put a bet down with anybody that after that $1.5 billion, 4 years from now, the Port Harcourt refinery will not be working. And if it works at best, it won't produce 30% of capacity. I'm willing to put that bet down, 50,000, put it down now with anybody. But we allow them to get this kind of nonsense. And our children suffer for it. It's going to be as cynical as saying, look, can we ask Temipre Silva and his friends to go and share $300 million and leave us alone? But you don't say those kinds of things in public. This is our country. Anyway, so that's about the strategy and politicians and all that stuff. We need to interrogate them a lot more closely with the full understanding. The second question about outsourcing, flexibility, and startups. One of the things that I don't see us do enough of around here is the use of business angels. One of the biggest challenges that the startup has, obviously, like the question I was raising, is that it doesn't have enough gravitas, resources, and all of that. But in exchange for some equity that could even be structured in a way that is sold back to the guys as the business begins to prosper, you can bring in people, maybe some great guy who's run his own business, wants to spend his new retirement age, helping younger business people. He brings his expertise, hanging around as a director or something, helps network suppliers and stuff like that. And, you know, if the business succeeds, he gets X percentage of the business. And after a couple of years, he can get capital gains and sell it back to the guy and move on. We need more creative things like that to bridge the limitations that the startup person does have. And then the question about the tire business. This is really a very important question for me personally. We're not going to generate the jobs that we need to generate in this country if we don't do something very strong around manufacturing and manufacturing for exports. When I worked for Volkswagen some 30 years or so ago, my argument was that we shouldn't be assembling cars in Nigeria because we are not doing it competitively enough. The backward integration isn't happening well enough. But if we went into an agreement with Volkswagen, if Peugeot in Kaduna went into an agreement with Peugeot SA in France and said, look, let's take one or two components in which we have local endowments. And one of my favorite endowments was rubber. So we say, since we grow rubber in Nigeria, Volkswagen worldwide production, why don't we invest in doing rubber plantations across Nigeria? Take 3-4 rubber components in the car. It could be tires, it could be just the buntings that you put on the door of the car, it could be this, and produce for your entire global production needs, manufactured in Nigeria, adding value. We would earn more money by far from just doing one of those components than we're earning from crude oil today. And that's why terms of trade continue to be against us, because we're not adding value and exporting. But we need serious industrial policy to back that. And that's what Nigeria has never managed to do effectively. You know, the cost of power in Nigeria, until you get it to the level that Aliko Dangote has managed to get it, because Aliko has done it pretty well, but it generates power, his own power, completely, but he does it at scale, and therefore is getting less cost per unit than public power in Nigeria. And so he can competitively manufacture large scale in Nigeria. So we've got to be able to create cooperative arrangements where clusters of manufacturers scale power and forget public power in Nigeria. And when they get a multiplicity of such collectives, there's enough power being generated that can then go into local networks before this national grid thing. The power strategy in Nigeria has been a disaster. Vietnam came out of a war and was able to get power done in a few short years. The Enron barges that came to Nigeria, that Lagos got into, came from Vietnam. Today, Vietnam is thriving in manufacturing because they got power right. In Nigeria, we just got it all wrong because of corruption. You know? It gets to you sometimes.
Prof,
He gets
I know
emotional too.
Prof is very passionate about this. That's why I said if we go there, we may not come back. But before we allow Prof take his final words and we bow out tonight, because we're closing in on 3 hours right now. And it's so interesting to see that we still have 94 people on the platform. So quickly, guys, why are we doing this? We're doing this because we've noticed, I mean, as an institution right now, the Nii Adesanya brand or the Nii Adesanya business think tank or the Nii Adesanya keeping your business in business. Why are we doing this? We know that in our part of the world, we hardly see organization that has grown to be 50 and 100 years. So that's why we're so passionate about this. we started a think tank that will be meeting in Dubai in this month, by the grace of God. And then my people told me already while I was making out about the business think tank, that I was saying that, but we don't have seats again. We don't have seats again, and that's just the truth. And if you've been noticing, if you notice our advert lately for the past 2 weeks, we've only been advertising the pastors' think tank. So I just told them that increase the number of rooms by 5, which we have done.
Voice is gone again. Your voice, Nee.
Can you hear me? Prof?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
I can hear you, sir.
Okay, where did I stop, Emmanuel?
You said they've increased the rooms by 5. I don't know.
Yeah,
You
we've
have
increased
one
the room
there.
by 5 so that we can, anybody who is
Yes.
interested right now, because we stopped actually advertising the business because we got, right now, we have over 35 people who are coming to Dubai. And then by the time we get the news from UK on the 17th of this month, it will definitely grow because the guys in the UK are saying Dubai is on the red list of UK, so they are looking at it. But we expect an announcement from United Kingdom government on the 17th to let us know, okay, is Dubai going to be dropped out of the red list and probably brought into the amber list or the green list? So we pray for that. That definitely will shoot our numbers up, and also the pastors meeting also. So if you're interested, I'm sure the people are going to be typing the numbers on the chat room that you can call quickly and then let them know. And if we can even try to find out more about it, what are the things that they can, what is this all about? I'm sure my team will be more than ready and to talk with you on that. Before I say thank you to everybody for joining in, I think it's good that we all say thank you to Prof before he does his final shot. So you can go to the chat room. Well, I'm sure my guys have seen that. Somebody saying that interested. Let me say this about the Dubai, last year's Dubai. All of us, together with Prof and everybody, we were staying in the same hotel. And what's the idea behind us going to Dubai? 2, number 1, it will bring in people from all over the world together in a place. 2, nobody can rush home. Nobody can say, no, there's a call, so I have to go home immediately. So you have to wait for the next flight the next day before you can even attend to any emergency. So that, in a way, made people just sit down there, they are relaxed, and they tell us, they roll out almost all the things that we wanted from them. So please look at that and everything. So Prof, we're saying thank you. You can see, look at the chat room, we're saying thank you. And then while you're typing thank you to Prof, Emmanuel, do you have something to say before we allow Prof round off this?
Yes, I just want to say that it's really a pleasure to see and also have on this platform a true nationalist, someone who has the interest of Nigeria at heart. He has not just communicated knowledge, he has communicated passion. Every time I come to Abuja, one of my uncles is a serving minister, and I usually stay with him at Aso Villa. But when I hear them talk, I hear people talk with passion for their state, passion for their region. And also when my thesis was a study on Nigeria, so I interviewed quite a lot of people. And I saw people who had regional interest, regional passion. But from what I hear Prof delivered tonight was a true passion for the nation. And we salute you, sir. We appreciate you. I mean, for people like you, we still have hope. And thank you for all you do. Thank you for coming here tonight. May God bless you and keep you for us. Somebody said that God should keep our fathers so that the children will not eat vulture as chicken. Thank you so much for giving us that separation tonight. Thank you, sir.
And then before Prof comes up, please note this, that this also will continue on on Saturday. Let me explain this. For those of us who probably got lost during the presentation, because you're wondering what Prof was throwing out was probably on the I side. It's okay. We have a program for you. That's every Thursday on Instagram. That's where we talk to starters. We call it the Entreprenata series. Entreprenata is entrepreneur and nata. Nata is the place of birth. And then that's where we birth and we nurture. So there we bring down, we come to the basics on what you need to do to start, and what you need to do to sustain your startup. But for here, right here, when we meet, keeping your business in business, are for people who are already in business and we want to scale up and we want to sustain their growth for 50 years and 100 years. So we'll not be talking about how you're going to make money in 10 days or 10 months. We're talking about things that you need to know to be able to sustain your business that long, which is very important to us. And every Thursday, we are on Instagram Live. If you connect with me on my Instagram Live, your Instagram page, you will know when and how we go about that. But every Saturday, 7 p.m., we're back here. The reason why we have not announced who is coming on Saturday is because we have not gotten a confirmation yet. But you can be rest assured that it's going to be around what Prof did and around what I did last week, which is all about case studies, brainstorming together, asking more questions, and all that. So you don't want to miss it. You want to be a part of everything that we do here. So thank you so much, Professor Pat. And then I'll give you the floor, round up for us, and then we will call it a beautiful day. And then for those of us who are Christians, remember to go to church tomorrow, or you do online.
Thank you so very much. It's a great pleasure to be able to participate this evening in this session. My goal was a very simple one. My goal was to say that any business that desires to succeed must have a strategy, and that the making of strategy is obviously a complex process, but you live in a very competitive world, and only those who can, keep their head down and get the strategy right, come up at the other end. It might seem a complex process, but some of the most effective strategies have been the simplest. One of the most effective airlines in the last 40 years of aviation is an airline called Southwest Airlines. And the strategy was constructed at a dinner table on a serviette, piece of serviette, just a little drawing. And it has been a winning strategy. It doesn't matter how small your business is, doesn't matter how big it is, you need to work on a strategy. And knowing the environment is critical for your strategy, because if you construct a strategy that does not pay attention to the national strategy, whether it exists or does not exist, then you're likely to be washed away by surprises. You're likely to live, you're likely to be a victim in this VUCA world in which we live in. We live in a very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Strategy must be able to adapt to the VUCA environment so that you can keep climbing ladders of opportunity as change comes, and you will come out strong in the end. I have no doubt that there are resources like Nia Desonya is offering here that can help most young entrepreneurs who are clear where they're going and want to work with people. One of the biggest mistakes I see in Nigeria is that young entrepreneurs, and I say this in class a lot, the young American who's starting a business will think, how much do I invest in marketing? Because it's the amount of marketing that we do that will get us to where we want to be. The average Nigerian who's starting a business thinks, when I get rich, I'll begin to market. And that's the wrong way to go about it. That expensive marketing initiative can be creatively navigated. I talked about use of business angels, the trade-offs that you can use to get what you need that won't cost you the kind of money it's supposed to cost you upfront. And then you will get further, faster, because you've got the right tools, the right people supporting you. And so I wish everybody huge success in the various things that they are doing. And that is the only way Nigeria will rise up again, building an entrepreneurial culture of passionate businessmen that create jobs. We can get a demographic dividend out of our youth bulge. If we don't get that dividend, the alternative is too frightening to be contemplated. It is the kind of implosion and travel to the road to Somalia that we don't want. Good luck, and thank you all. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with you.
Thank you, Prof. Prof had been with us for 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours, and that's huge. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Don't forget, you want to be with us in Dubai, there's a number to call quickly so that we can get, and we can hold your hands. The vision here is to help you build organizations that will last for years. Emmanuel, thank you so much. And those of us who asked questions, thank you. Don't forget, make sure you follow us on my Instagram page. And then also we have your email. If you don't have your email, it's good you put it on the chat room so that you can know when we are doing some other thing. Next week, Saturday, we'll surely be here and we'll let you know who's coming and the topic that we'll be treating. And also on Thursday, you can meet us on the Instagram live page. We'll be talking about money, market, microfinancing, and everything like that when it comes to Thursday. So you can join us there quickly. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. So glad that we stayed all through. Abioye, okay, Abuja, I thank you for staying. I can see you. Thank you. Vera, UK, thank you. Olukayode, Shofola, Dubai, thank you. You guys should open the doors, please. Samson Odegbami, thank you for staying all through. Thank you to Olutaiwo, thank you. Everybody I can see, the few ones I can see. Yejide, thank you for coming on board. Thank you guys, and I'm sure you actually got a whole lot to work with. And Sonny Samuel, thank you also for coming. Yeah, I saw my friend, it's been a while. Samuel Rufai, thank you for dropping by. Thank you for sharing. And then if Galaxy S8 is my cousin, my brother, Oye Wilkie, thank you for dropping by also. And if you're not, thank you for dropping by all the same. So guys.
And Okelgene is here too.
Oh, okay, my guy. Thank you for dropping by. Thank you for being part of this. Femi, Tolu Taiwo, Tosin Babalola, you need to call me so that we can talk. Joy Abraham. Oh, Joy Abraham, interesting. Thank you for joining in. I can see you on the call. Oluwaseun, also thank you. Everybody, thank you. Olushola Salau, thank you. Nicholas, thank you. Fumi Lawal, wow. I hope that's my cousin. I would really appreciate that's my cousin. If that is my cousin, please drop me a chat on my WhatsApp. You should have my number. Please, if that is my cousin, I will appreciate if we could talk also. Thank you. Honorable Akonde, am I right? Yeah, am I saying well? Honorable Akonde, thank you also for joining. And then Club EFI, we need to talk. Drop your direct number with my guys. I would like to call you and see how we can partner and work together. Club EFI, you can also call the number that is on the screen and let us see how we can get a lot of things rolling together. So guys, thank you.